Welcome to the Beatles Talk Show. I'm Terry. This is Glenn. We're here for our second show today. We're covering some of the highlight Beatle historical events that happened on January 7th on different years. Such as...
Such as... First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Terry, for having me come to your lovely house and to record this for the wonderful Beatle fans out there like us.
Yeah.
Fans for life. Still going strong at 30.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But anyway, on this day, the 7th of January, did you know that Paul McCartney's brother Michael was born?
Mike McGear.
Mike McGear was born on this day.
It's interesting that, of course, they both grew up being interested in music, and of course Mike tried to become famous, and I guess he did to a point. He was in a band in the late 60s, The Scaffold. Yeah. And they had a little bit of hit, maybe one hit, I think, in England. But obviously his career was kind of short-lived. But it's interesting, just the musical talent in that family.
Why? You know why he changed it to McGear? Because McCartney was obviously, it would have been instant success. And being that it was his brother, he thought, I want to try to make it on my own. That's why he changed his name, I think.
So maybe he shouldn't have.
He shouldn't. He should have skipped the name. I don't know. He seemed like a nice fellow. But
yeah.
Doesn't matter. Another thing that happened in this day in history, do you know that the Beatles taped a 7-song appearance on BBC radio program Saturday Club? Did you know that?
It's interesting. They used to perform a lot of their early Cavern Club type material, the covers and stuff, and they didn't actually get to officially release a lot of them, but they still played them in their live shows. And I guess once they became famous, their live shows were so short, plugging all their original material, their hit songs, they didn't get to still play those old Cavern hits, so they probably actually enjoyed doing it. It was a rare chance to actually play those songs that they actually would not play live.
You're right.
That's kind of interesting.
They did Johnny Be Good, which was the only time they did that song that's actually on tape, was at that appearance on Saturday Club back in 60.
Yeah, that's true. And, Hippie Hippie Shake is another example, a song that they played for years but never released. And, for me, because I've heard the Beatles play it so many times, I actually think of it as a Beatles song, even though it was never a hit for them.
It's one of my favorite songs with a great Paul vocal, I think.
Another thing that maybe is one of the most important events in the late 60s for the Beatles is George Harrison left England bound for India on this date in 1968. Yeah. And of course he would spend a lot of time there. They dealt with the Maharishi, and he got involved. He started doing the soundtrack for Wonderwall. And, it just inspired him. It boosted his confidence to get into recording, producing himself. Yeah. Of course, you may say this helped lead to the breakup of the band, because now George was like, hey, I can do this too. Yeah. So that's kind of a historic moment.
I think he liked Indian food myself.
Well, maybe he did, right?
But
he's got lots of ties
the Beatles actually had been there already in 67. So, he obviously liked it very much and wanted to go back.
Right, and they didn't all go back, but he did.
He did.
I can't remember, did Paul go back?
I can't remember. I don't think so. I think him and Mel Evans, the Beatles tour manager, went to Africa in 67 for a while. But back to India, I don't think so. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I can't remember. But anyway, George went back to India at that time.
Also on January 7th in 1969, it was another day in the studio. The Beatles had been recording themselves every day, working on this movie, Get Back, and they were recording, releasing. Daily rehearsals were all filmed as they worked on new songs that would land up being on Abbey Road.
Right.
But of course, at this period, almost every day in early January of 69, the Beatles were fighting. They hated each other at this time. The rehearsals were really sucking for them, and they were fighting all the time. And even on this date, John Lennon criticized George for being a lousy songwriter. So that couldn't have gone well, obviously.
Well, and they rehearsed Across the Universe. John forgot most of the lyrics. to that song, which is funny. They recorded Maxwell Silver Hammer on this day as well, a song that neither George or John liked very much. I personally do like it though. I think it's kind of cute. You know, it kind of was along the lines of Mary Had a Little Lamb and that early McCartney solo stuff. I kind of enjoy that part of the whimsical side of the Beatles, personally, myself. But that is what happened. You know, the Get Back set, the Let It Be album was actually, you fans know this, was actually originally called Get Back. And that was going to be the title of the album because they were getting back to basics. And then Paul wanted the band to go back on tour, doing small clubs. You know, and then that evolved into, okay, they didn't want to do the small club tour anymore. John thought that was ridiculous. It wouldn't work. So then they decided, okay, we'll do one big show, maybe on a cruise ship or in one of the Greek amphitheaters in Greece. You know, and all good ideas. I mean, it would have been fantastic to have something like that on film, but you know, it was rejected at the last. They just didn't. Paul wanted to do it, and the other three didn't, and it's sad. It's too bad, man. It really is.
Yeah, at that point, you know, they weren't obviously agreeing on anything.
That's true.
And it was leading to their separation. So maybe the end of the band was guaranteed at this point, even though they wouldn't be officially disbanded for a long time.
But I am happy we do have the Let It Be film on video cassette, and rumor has it that the actual movie Let It Be will be released on DVD, Blu-ray in 2017, 2018. We're not quite sure. It's rumored, and I think it'd be a good idea. I think a lot of fans would like to see a remastered copy. It is a great movie, whether it's, you know, the break of the Beatles or not. It's rare. Everybody should own it. You know, there's some good moments on there actually. There are some very good moments.
My highlight of the entire Let It Be movie is the first minute when Paul is playing this haunting melody on the piano, instrumental. That's what I like. It's like, that's cool. Of course, they never released that. It's like, that's cool.
Yeah, I've got 2 hours of unreleased black and white footage from that as well.
There is, you know, a ton of material from those sessions, which ran about 30 days throughout January '69. The bootlegs are out there. You can listen to them and hear all the fighting and hear a lot of lousy arrangements and bad stuff. But, of course, all the gems did come out of this.
Well, you and I know from recording and being recording artists ourselves that how many hours, you have a 2-minute song per se, you might have 200 hours of material that is just gibberish. You know, so you can't blame them because, right, it takes a long time for a song to evolve if it even gets to that point. That's my take on it.
Seeing that we're looking back at January 7th, this was only a month after John Lennon had been killed in January 7th, 1981. So sort of sad news, but kind of everybody paid respects. Starting Over went #1 around the world. And in England, the demand for Lennon records was so strong that on this date in 1981, a month after he died, he was replaced by himself at #1 in England, and Imagine went to #1 for the first time because of his death.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So he got 2 #1 songs in a row because he died.
Yeah. Great songs, though. I mean, obviously, the tragic events that occurred are what propelled the songs to #1, but they are great songs and probably deserve to be #1, you know?
It's interesting that, you know, Imagine over the last few decades has become such an anthem, this ultimate classic. People will say, oh, that's Lennon's greatest song, though originally it wasn't a #1 song really anywhere. No. I mean, it was very successful. It just wasn't the biggest song on the radio. Yeah. And even Starting Over wouldn't have hit #1 either if John hadn't died. So John had a huge boost of sales, unfortunately, due to his death. And he'd lined up winning even the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1982 for Double Fantasy. So I always like to tell people, hey, you know that Yoko Ono won Album of the Year at the Grammys? Because she did have the album. So, well, there's some of the highlights of January 7th. So we'd like to thank you for watching. Tune in. We'll be back tomorrow.
Again, thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow, okay? Cool.
So, my dear friends, come back when you can.